All right, Green Bay Packers. Dane Brugler has them going Will Johnson, Michigan corner. Lance Zierlein going Savone Revel Jr., the ECU corner. And ESPN has them going Shamar Stewart, Texas A&M defensive end. Would fit their MO. Obviously, they've pretty much every edge they've drafted in the first round, Rashawn Gary, Lucas Van Ness, are scouting reports read very similarly.
Monsters.
Yeah, their scouting reports read very similarly. Honestly, if you read them out, I'm not sure you'd be able to discern from them. So if he's on the board there, I would be surprised if they don't pick him. I think they will pick him, but very well may not be on the board. I prefer Will Johnson. He's the highest on my board of these three. I think he's the cleanest of these three. He can play press in a way that I think fits what they want to do defensively. And, you know, they have Jair Alexander on the roster now. If you paired him with Jair Alexander, I'm not complaining. Like, even if you keep him on the roster, I think it's a position that you could address. So give me Will Johnson.
I really like the name Willie Johnson.
That feels like a 1970s baseball player.
Yeah. Like he had a giant glove. Just out there. Big glove. Pancake. Like right, it wasn't rounded, just a pancake glove. I like the idea of going secondary. You know, Hafley wants to be able to do multiple things in coverage. And to have a guy like that at the line of scrimmage, you can take away, you know, the alley, that part of the football field, and you can allocate your resources elsewhere. But that Kuiper Yates pick with Shamar Stewart, I feel like it's right there with what the Packers have done. They get these guys who are extremely explosive off the line of scrimmage. And I remember when Rashawn Gary first came in the league, he was one of those guys where you watch come off the football and you go, my God, when he figures this thing out, we are all in big, big, big trouble. And it was the same conversation the offensive line had after the first time they saw a guy like Danielle Hunter in Minnesota. Mm-hmm. Just a specimen. And doesn't know what he's doing. A big Great Dane puppy dog out there. And if somebody gets their hands on him and shows him how to turn talent into, you know, production, you're looking at a home run for the Green Bay Packers.
All right, Minnesota Vikings. We have Zierlein trading them out of the first round entirely. So no pick there for them. So only two options. We got Dane Brugler going J.D. Barron, and then ESPN going Donovan Jackson. So a corner or a guard for the Vikings, because I think for the Vikings specifically, Donovan Jackson can play tackle. He will be playing left guard for the Minnesota Vikings. They have one of the best tackle duos in the NFL.
Donovan Jackson's got to be the pick, in my opinion. You're bringing this young guy who looks like he plays lacrosse for Duke to play quarterback for you in J.J. McCarthy. And, you know, we talk about the eyeball test, physicality. We need bodyguards. We need people to come in and protect J.J. McCarthy and make his transition as a starter easier. Obviously, there's a number of ways you can do that. You can get him another receiver to that stacked room, or you can bring in a tight end, or you could bring in whatever the hell you want. But the best option to keep his vision clear and to keep his confidence high is to put a guy like Donovan Jackson in. You plug him in day one. You don't even look at him. You don't blink because that guy can play football.
I think within the first two rounds, they need to address left guard. If this were Gray Zabel here, between J.D. Barron and Gray Zabel, I'd probably lean Zabel because I think the value makes sense. Donovan Jackson, I just have quite a bit lower on my board, where I think you're reaching if you're at 24 taking him. If you trade back, get Donovan Jackson. Yeah, like
you have a real need.
Yes, it's a need that needs to be addressed. But I look at this cornerback group and I'm like, this is a need that needs to be addressed too. You got Isaiah Rodgers, Jeff Okudah, Mekhi Blackman as your outside corners right now, Dwight McGlothern. There are, you know, maybe they bring back Stephon Gilmore. He's still a free agent. I think there's a good chance that they sign one regardless of what they do in the draft. But I'm going to lead J.D. Barron. Versatile, physical. I think just for them right now, you got more picks in this draft. Go get a guard. Then Houston Texans up next. Number 25. Three different guys here. Donovan Jackson from Lance Zierlein, who we just talked about, the Ohio State tackle/guard. Dane Brugler going Walter Nolen, Ole Miss DT, and then ESPN going Tet McMillan. T-Mac, can't believe they had him falling to 25. I'll just say this. I'm not entertaining T-Mac here. I don't think it's possible he falls to 25. I'm not even going to put that as one. So Walter Nolen, Donovan Jackson. What do you think between those two?
The first thing I think is that Walter Nolen is also a single-digit guy on the interior part of the defensive line, but his body makes it okay.
Justifies it. He's lean.
Cougar, okay? He's a trim Ole Miss rib. I like the looks of him, but, Donovan Jackson, you heard what I said about him and the impact he has on a quarterback. C.J. Stroud going into his third year, he had a little bit of a letdown in the protection department. They got rid of Laramie Tunsil. They spread some money around there. Why don't you bring in another guy to kind of reset the floor for Houston's offense? I think that you can never go wrong picking these offensive linemen. T-Mac, rather, not going to be available. Walter Nolen, wouldn't be mad about that either.
Walter Nolen to the Texans is one of my favorite fits this draft. I think that's just what the doctor ordered. I think that's how you take this defensive line. That was very good last year. Your ed duo at worst is the top 3 duo in the NFL. But they just had nothing on the interior. Nothing to complement it. No way to push guys into Dale Hunter's arms, into Will Anderson's arms. So give me Walter Nolen. Heck of an athlete. And kind of like, yeah, they need offensive line. I'm not going to sugarcoat that it's a bad unit still. But they have a lot of guys at this point in time to where if they don't draft one single offensive lineman in this draft, which again, I think would be malpractice, but if they don't draft a single one, they have starters. You got Cam Robinson. Your starting lineup would be something like Cam Robinson, Titus Howard, or maybe Lake and Tomlinson, and then either Juice Scruggs or Jarrett Patterson at center, right guard, maybe Ed Ingram or Titus Howard, Blake Fisher at right tackle. You signed Trent Brown too. Like there's a lot of players there now. Obviously, you got to squint to find one where you're like, he's a good player. But there's a lot of players that are drafted highly or signed to give a lot of money to. So that's kind of how I feel about the Houston Texans.
I'm looking at Walter Nolen's high school pictures. He wore number 1 at Powell.
He was 5-star.
Number 1 defensive line recruit. But maybe he wears single digit in Houston. Can we bet on that?
I bet he's
Can we bet on like wherever he goes? This is a guy that's going to wear single digit. Can I make money?
This is what FanDuel needs to be. These are the real draft props we want. Will he wear single digits in the league?
That's interesting.
I wonder what odds you could even put on that. All right, 26, Los Angeles Rams. Our first sighting of Josh Connerly, the Oregon offensive tackle. Dane Brugler has him going there. We had the trade up for the Rams earlier to number 21 to get Jahdae Barron, Texas corner. And we had Maxwell Hairston here in the ESPN mock, the Kentucky corner. First sighting for him as well. Which one's your favorite? And I think I have an inkling of where you're going to go here.
Well, obviously, I like Josh Connerly, and to keep things on the West Coast, it would be nice. But this guy, Maxwell Hairston, good-looking athlete. I'm sure you've taken a look at him more than I have. But like I said, never leave a team without corners, and they've got some youth in the secondary there. And we saw some guys make some big plays last year in big spots. But what you need is that floor to be higher, and you bring a guy like Maxwell Hairston in, and it could really raise that floor for your defense, your secondary.
I'll just say this. I think the Rams, I know they're one of the most analytically driven teams. They're one of the most forward-thinking teams in the NFL. I think there's a reason why their secondary has almost no draft capital allotted to it. You don't have a guy in there that was drafted on day 1 or day 2. It's just in that cornerback group. Your earliest one, Cam Kinchins at safety, was a back end of the 3rd round guy. They are not a team. They are going to address the trenches, the guys that they know that are difficult to find later on when they know they can find corners later on. And the way they set up that defense is to minimize the impact of corners. They're playing like this such soft zone off coverage stuff that basically turns your corners into
safeties.
Guys who are covering as much ground as linebackers, right? Yeah. Safeties. So from that perspective, I lean Connerly because those are the guys that are harder to find. The big athletes who can play offensive tackle, who can play up front. And I think the Rams will too. I just don't see them trading up for a corner in Jahdae Barron. And I think if they do draft a corner, it's the 3rd round. I don't think it's round 1. All right, Baltimore Ravens. 3 different guys here. We have Brugler having Kelvin Banks fall all the way to here, the Texas offensive tackle again. I don't know if I can even entertain that. I don't think it's possible that he falls to 27, but crazier things, I guess, have happened. Lance Zierlein, Nicky Manwari, the South Carolina safety. Oh my gosh. I haven't even thought about that fit yet, but I am starting to get kind of obsessed with it. Mel Kiper, Field Yates going Malachi Starks, the Georgia safety. First sighting from him. Which one do you like the most here?
I love Malachi Starks, but Nick Manwari would be a lot of fun. I just feel like either Starks or Manwari would be good fits. And they both have names that I feel like would look and sound good at M&T Bank Stadium in Baltimore come around November, making plays with that defense, that star power. You add to the star power of that defense, good things will happen. You make your strengths even stronger.
Everyone's kind of like called the Manwari like a Kyle Hamilton light. And everyone's like, wants to find a Kyle Hamilton. Well, shoot, why don't you put him in the same secondary as Kyle Hamilton?
Just get two of them.
Oh, my gosh. Yeah, I have Starks higher. I have him as my safety one. But for the Baltimore Ravens specifically, again, like I love elite units. I love freaky units. I love getting a unit that can dictate terms on the defensive side of the ball because that's, I think, changes what offenses have to do. If you have Nick Manwari and Kyle Hamilton on the back end, like you can dictate terms. You can do things defensively that are scary to think about. So give me Nick Manwari. Detroit Lions. 3 different guys here. Brugler going Maxwell Harrison, Kentucky corner. Zierlein going Josh Connerly, Oregon offensive lineman. And then Kiper Yates going Michael Williams, the Georgia defensive end. Not a lot of needs. So all 3 guys. I think corner, though, they just drafted a bunch last year, right? Terrion Arnold, Enos Radkestraw. Back-to-back years going first-round corner after spending as much capital as they did last year on it. I think I'm looking elsewhere. And I'm looking at Josh Connerly Jr. I love Michael Williams, too. I don't think you can go wrong with either. But left guard, to me, still qualifies as a need. I know Graham Glasgow is kind of on his last rope here, and he was rated the weak link last season. I love what I saw from Christian Mahogany. I think he's going to be a long-term starter for them. Throw in one more piece, one more first-rounder, and just keep that offensive line train humming for the foreseeable future.
Oregon Duck. Throw him with another Oregon Duck, just like the Kyle Hamilton conversation. Go find another archetype like that. Well, go put 2 badass Oregon Ducks in the same room. Watch what happens, man. Okay? Ducks fly together, bro.
Yeah. Too bad. Maybe they go out and sign a former Oregon Duck.
Because look, the strength of that team has been the offensive line. It's what we rave about. Guys who are calling the games, they just circle that O-line, circle the O-line, circle the O-line. To your point, Glasgow on the way out. Bring a guy in who can play either of those positions at the drop of a hat, can fill in a tackle, can fill in a guard.
Yes. And that's the other thing is Taylor Decker is going into season 10, right? So how many more does he have? TBD. If you get a guy like Connerly, the same thing. He's left guard now. He's left tackle later. Profit. Commanders. 4 more picks to go here. Emeka Egbuka, Ohio State wide receiver. Dane Brugler has that. Zierlein has going Trey Amos, Ole Miss corner. And then ESPN trade out of the first round entirely. Obviously, we're not going to entertain that one.
I love that
Trey Amos or Emeka Egbuka. You like that one?
Well, I've often said Lake Erie is where quarterbacks go to die. And Lake Erie is where the city of Cleveland sits upon.
Yeah. So you have the Browns coming up to take Jackson Dart there.
I also saw in one of my predictions this offseason, the Jackson Dart would lead his team to a Super Bowl in the next 5 years. And this would be unbelievably unrealistic. So let's go Jackson Dart getting traded to the Browns.
All right. I like Egbuka here. I think just a solid number 2, reliable guy who blocks in the running game. I like that fit. Corner's probably a need.
I just don't want to see Jaden Daniels with more weapons, man. Okay. I met Terry McLaurin last week. Might have been the nicest guy I've ever met. Most easy to talk to. I'm like, some things are just unfair. Jaden Daniels, that's unfair. It should be cheating. Terry McLaurin, you shouldn't be able to be that good of a guy and be that great at football. You throw Emeka in there, and it's just, they're spoiled. They've got, a number of guys coming in. Laramie Tunsil. Come on.
Yeah.
You're going to make me root for the damn Commanders.
Buffalo Bills here. Brugler has him going Malachi Starks. Zierlein has him going Donovan Ezeraku. First Donovan Ezeraku citing the BC edge. And then ESPN has him going Trey Amos, the Ole Miss cornerback. I love Malachi Starks here. I love Malachi Starks. He is very high on my board. He's going to be a top 20 player for me. None of those other guys even close. None of those other guys are even going to be top 30 players for me. So when that's the case, it's a need, it's a fit. He's a heck of a player, and he could even play. I mean, this guy can play all over. I think he could play corner in the league if he wanted to. So for all those reasons, give me Malachi.
Malachi, I'm in agreement with you here. Buffalo needs versatility weapons on defense. You know, they've struggled in the pass rush department. They've lacked in star power on the back end. Let's bring a guy in who's an immediate fit that can improve our defense.
All right, Chiefs at 31. They're going to put you in a pickle here and make you, what's it, Sophie's choice? You're going to have to choose.
I'm going to choose.
Dane Brugler and Lance Zierlein have him going Josh Simmons, the Ohio State offensive tackle, who obviously has the injury red flag. But then ESPN has him going Josh Connerly, your boy from Oregon. So
Josh Connerly's already gone. He's already a Detroit Lion. I'm already on the Fanatec Fanatics website.
Oh, that's how you're going to deal with it. So you're going to say it's not possible. He's gone.
Well, you've heard me say this about Josh Simmons. If he's healthy, I think he could be the best guy in the draft.
Yeah.
If he's healthy, this could be one of those steals. And it seems a bit perfect to see him with the Kansas City Chiefs, because I was there when there was a young man from the University of Tennessee who had a heart condition that everybody red flagged and everybody said wasn't going to be able to play in the National Football League. And I was there when they drafted a left-handed center who's, part Native American from the state of Oklahoma. And they said, you guys are crazy. Lefty's never going to play center. Creed Humphrey, all pro. Trey Smith, all pro, Pro Bowl type. Bring in another guy that there's question marks about. Andy Heck's going to coach him up. Big Red's going to use him the right way. They're going to have him play the right position, whether it's guard, because you got Caliendo in there at left guard, or the tackle spot. But they just signed a tackle. So it'll be interesting to see how this thing ends up. But both tackles, there's question marks. Left guard, there's a question mark. Josh Simmons is a guy that can meet all those needs, in my opinion, if he is healthy. And if he's not healthy coming off the patellar, it could be a swing and a miss year one. But let that training staff with Julie Freimeyer and Rick Burkholder, the best trainers in the National Football League, let them work their little wizard and witch hands on Josh Simmons' knee. And Mahomes is safe, man.
I like Connerly better just because he can play right now. And again, the window is still right now. And he can play right now. And he fills in a left guard right now. So, and the other thing is, he's a year younger than Simmons. So the leap we saw from Simmons this year, maybe that was the leap we were going to see from Connerly next year if he stayed. I don't think, just from an athlete perspective, how they move, and just I don't see one ceiling being necessarily higher than the other. I think they both have sky-high ceilings. So all that being said, prefer Connerly if he's on the board. If he's not on the board, I'd still take Simmons here. I think both are going to be darn good tackles. But again, Simmons has a little bit more of that risk associated. Philadelphia Eagles, last one here of the mock madness.
A trade has been submitted.
And this is the end. That concludes the first round. Philadelphia Eagles. Daniel Jeremiah has him trading out. So no pick there. And he has the Saints taking Jackson Dart. Everyone wants to come up and get Jackson Dart, apparently. Dane Brugler has them going Donovan Ezeraku, the BC edge.
Jackson Dart is nice, boy. Hey. That boy's
and then
nice.
ESPN has me going Jihad Campbell, the Alabama linebacker, which is a fit that I've said I loved.
Well,
Jihad
if he's there.
Yeah, he very well may not be there. But Jihad, whatever, you could say Eagles don't draft linebackers this highly. They very well may not. But Jihad and Zach Bond for Vic Fangio's defense. That's that could be.
Roquan, Danny Trevathan was the last duo that Vic Fangio
and just
had.
from a
I believe it was
perspective.
Roquan and Danny Trevathan with Khalil Mack, Akeem Hicks. It's a lot like what we have in Philadelphia.
I was thinking a little higher. I was thinking Patrick Willis, Navarro Bowman.
Well, that was before. Before our Jets' time. Okay, that was before. That was the land before time.
But these are two guys that are high-end blitzers, high-end block defeaters, shall we say, and just have size to make difficult those lanes over the middle of the football field that, they're playing a lot of zone coverage in that Vic Fangio defense. They ask them to cover a lot of ground. These guys can do it. So, give me Jihad Campbell there.
Jihad Campbell, this guy is so big and so built for football. It's impressive. A lot of times linebackers are born, and when I say linebackers are born, I mean, their mentality, guys like Matt Milano or Roquan Smith, these guys aren't the biggest dudes on the field. They're not the most jacked human beings. If you saw them at the bar, you'd be like, I bet that guy was an athlete. You're not like, that guy's a superhuman. Jahad Campbell has that physique where it's like, holy shit, can he actually play? Like, because he looks like he can play, and he can. Yes. Vic Fangio would have a field day with him.
Yes, I love that fit.